I want you to picture a single moment where everything you thought you understood about Loki quietly breaks apart. Not with an explosion, not with a heroic speech, but with a pause, a breath, a look. Loki stands in front of a machine that was never meant to be fully understood, a machine designed to intimidate even its creators. And in that one silent moment, Loki proves something terrifying. He proves that he already understands it. That realization, once it hits you, refuses to leave. It lingers, grows, and slowly rewrites everything you thought you knew about his journey. This video isn't really about what Loki becomes in the end. It's about who Loki may have already encountered long before the TVA, long before timelines started ripping apart, and long before the words temporal loom meant anything to us. I think the biggest secret of Loki Season 2 isn't hidden in a flashy cameo or a post-credit tease. It's hidden in speed. The speed with which Loki grasps a system that everyone else agrees should take centuries to understand. That speed isn't dramatic convenience. It's evidence. And if we follow that evidence honestly, it leads somewhere very unexpected. When I went back and carefully rewatched the temporal loom scene, something immediately felt off, in a good way. Loki doesn't ask how to fix the loom. He asks how long it would take to fully understand it. That distinction matters. OB and Mobius don't sugarcoat their answer. They estimate centuries, maybe even more. They say it casually, but what they're really saying is that this knowledge is fundamentally unreachable in a single lifetime. This isn't just a machine. It's a system that processes infinity. And infinity doesn't come with shortcuts. What happens next is what most people miss. Loki doesn't react the way anyone else would. There's no fear, no frustration, no denial. Instead, he steps closer, studies the loom, and reaches a conclusion almost immediately. Not later. Not after experimentation. Right there. He understands that the loom can't be redesigned. It has to be reshaped. That single realization carries more weight than the scene lets on because it proves Loki is operating with knowledge far beyond what the TVA should allow. The show never stops to explain how Loki gets there, and that's intentional. But if you follow the internal logic, the answer has been sitting in front of us the entire time. Loki has been time slipping. We experience it as chaos, as confusion, as loss of control. But what if that chaos was also education? What if every uncontrolled jump wasn't just displacement, but exposure? Exposure to outcomes, to collapses, to consequences playing out across endless variations of reality. Here's the key detail that changes everything for me. Loki keeps returning to the same moments, but nothing suggests that time between those returns is instant for him. Between each snapback, Loki exists. He observes. He watches timelines rise, fracture, and die. He sees the same decisions produce different results. Cause and effect stop being theory and start becoming pattern. The show never shows us centuries passing, but it doesn't have to. Loki lives them. This is the off-screen truth that completely reframes his arc. Loki doesn't magically become enlightened. He earns it the hardest way possible, by living through more time than almost any being we've seen in the MCU. He watches systems fail again and again. He sees that rigid structures resist change until they snap. And slowly, painfully, he learns the one lesson machines can never teach. Control without growth always leads to collapse. That's why Loki's final decision looks the way it does. He doesn't build a stronger machine. He doesn't upgrade the loom. He abandons the idea entirely. Instead, he creates something alive. Something that can grow, adapt, and respond. The shape he chooses isn't random or symbolic fan service. It's Yggdrasil, not as myth, but as architecture. A living multiversal structure. This isn't nostalgia for Asgard. This is advanced design disguised as mythology. And this is where my focus shifted away from Loki alone. Because this level of understanding doesn't come from instinct. It comes from study, from philosophy, from someone who has already walked this path. There is one name in Marvel history that represents mastery over the multiverse, not through chaos, but through structure. One mind that treats reality like something that can be understood, mapped, and guided. That name is Dr. Doom. In the comics, Doom isn't just a villain. He's a multiversal scholar. He has built maps of realities. He has constructed platforms that exist outside time itself. He understands that timelines aren't just paths, they're narratives. Stories that can be shaped, redirected, or destroyed depending on who holds the pen. Doom's greatest weapon has never been his armor. It's his perspective. What separates Doom from everyone else is his rejection of purely mechanical control. Doom never believed the multiverse could be ruled like a machine. He believed it had to be guided like a living system, given structure, but also freedom to grow. When I connected that philosophy to Loki's final choice, it stopped feeling emotional. It started feeling educated, like Loki wasn't improvising, like he was applying something he already knew. Because Loki doesn't become a king. He doesn't rule. He doesn't dominate. He becomes something else entirely. The silent axis holding infinite stories together. In comic terms, that role has a name, God of Stories. And that concept doesn't come from Asgardian legend. It comes from deep Marvel lore rooted in narrative control rather than brute force. Here's the part that truly unsettled me. Loki's conclusions mirror Doom's philosophy almost perfectly. Machines fail. Living systems endure. True power lies not in domination, but in shaping the story itself. These are not ideas you stumble into. These are ideas you arrive at after lifetimes of study, which forces one uncomfortable question into the open. If Loki needed centuries to learn this, who taught him where to look? Because no one in the TVA thinks this way. He who remains certainly didn't. He built loops, cages, and redundancies. Loki builds growth, ecosystems, futures. That difference isn't accidental. It feels inherited, like Loki is finishing a lesson that began long before we ever saw him. This is where the theory starts to get dangerous. Because if Loki was influenced by someone with this level of multiversal understanding, it means his transformation didn't start in season 1. It started off screen. In shadows Marvel hasn't shown us yet. And once you accept that, one final question becomes impossible to ignore. If Loki learned how to save the multiverse, who needed him to do it? And why would someone powerful enough to understand all of this choose to remain hidden while reality itself was falling apart? That unanswered question is where everything finally locks into place. If someone understood the multiverse well enough to predict its collapse, and if that someone also understood that they themselves couldn't be the one holding it together, then the smartest move wouldn't be to step into the light. It would be to prepare a successor, someone capable of existing outside linear time, someone adaptable enough to endure infinity without breaking, and someone morally flexible enough to make impossible choices without hesitation. When I look at Loki's journey through that lens, it stops feeling like destiny and starts feeling like recruitment. Dr. Doom has always operated like this in the comics. He doesn't rush to the battlefield unless the endgame demands it. He builds contingencies on top of contingencies, layers, plans inside other plans, and often positions himself as the final variable rather than the first. Doom understands one brutal truth better than almost anyone else in Marvel history. If you reveal yourself too early, you become the target. But if you let others reshape reality in your absence, you can inherit a stronger universe later. Loki fits perfectly into that philosophy. Think about what Loki uniquely brings to the table. He is Asgardian, which gives him an absurdly long lifespan and a natural relationship with cosmic concepts. He is a trickster, which means he can survive uncertainty and contradiction. Most importantly, he is emotionally capable of change. Doom rarely trusts anyone, but when he does, it's because they can grow beyond their original nature. Loki does exactly that. He abandons chaos not because it's taken from him, but because he outgrows it. That evolution is not accidental. It's cultivated. Now I want to shift focus slightly to the TVA itself, because this is where the theory gains another layer. The TVA's technology is unlike anything else in the MCU. It isn't purely scientific, and it isn't purely magical. It exists in that strange hybrid space where advanced physics and ritualistic design overlap. Time doors behave like spells. Reset charges feel more like curses than bombs. Even the architecture has a ceremonial quality to it. That blend is incredibly rare, but there is one character in Marvel who lives in that intersection by design: Dr. Doom. Doom is one of the few beings who fully masters both science and magic without seeing a contradiction between them. To him, they are just tools, different languages describing the same underlying truth. The TVA operates on that same principle, and yet the show never explains who originally designed its core concepts. He who remains claims ownership, but his expertise is narrow. He controls time through isolation and pruning. Doom studies time through integration and synthesis. Those are very different mindsets. If Doom had early influence over TVA concepts, even indirectly, it would explain why its systems feel incomplete, like prototypes. Like something designed to manage time temporarily, not nurture it indefinitely. Doom doesn't build final solutions unless he plans to rule them himself. Everything else is scaffolding, a test run. And Loki stepping into the TVA would have been the perfect opportunity to observe how a potential successor responds to that scaffolding once it starts to fail. This also reframes Loki's rapid mastery of TVA operations. He doesn't just learn quickly. He understands intuitively, as if he's seeing familiar patterns reappear in new forms. Almost like someone who has already been introduced to the underlying logic of multiversal mechanics before ever setting foot in the TVA. That kind of familiarity doesn't come from intelligence alone. It comes from exposure, from prior conversation, from someone explaining the rules before the game officially begins. Which brings me back to Doom's motivation. Why Loki? Why not build his own solution? The answer is surprisingly simple. Doom cannot sit on the throne of time and remain Doom. Absolute responsibility requires absolute stillness. Loki can endure that. Doom cannot. Doom needs to act, to intervene, to reshape reality when necessary. Loki's role is not to rule the multiverse. It's to hold it, to keep it alive while others move within it. That division of labor is elegant and very Doom-like. There's also a thematic consistency here that Marvel has been quietly building. Loki's transformation isn't about power. It's about perspective. He stops asking what he deserves and starts asking what the universe needs. Doom's philosophy is similar but twisted. Doom believes the universe needs him. Loki believes the universe needs balance. That difference is crucial. It allows Doom to remain in shadow while Loki becomes the visible axis of stability. The multiverse survives, and Doom retains freedom. Another detail that supports this theory is Loki's comfort with isolation at the end. He doesn't resist it. He doesn't rage against it. He accepts it. That acceptance doesn't come naturally to someone like Loki. It has to be learned, understood, internalized. Doom understands solitude. He understands the cost of omniscience. If Loki was prepared for this role, emotionally and philosophically, it suggests guidance, preparation, not improvisation. And then there's Yggdrasil itself. In Norse myth, it's a symbol. In Loki's hands, it's a system, a way to visualize and stabilize infinite realities without constraining them. Doom's research into multiversal structures often circles around similar imagery: trees, webs, networks, living frameworks rather than rigid grids. The fact that Loki arrives at this solution independently is impressive. The fact that it aligns so perfectly with Doom's established thinking is suspicious. Coincidences don't usually line up this cleanly in Marvel storytelling. Now consider the timing. The MCU is clearly positioning Doctor Doom as a future cornerstone. You don't introduce a character like that without laying groundwork, and Marvel loves planting seeds years in advance. Loki, Season 2 functions as a bridge. It resolves one era of multiversal chaos while quietly establishing rules for the next. Doom entering a universe already stabilized by Loki makes his eventual rise far more believable. He isn't fixing a broken system. He's exploiting a stable one. This also explains why Doom hasn't been name-dropped yet. His influence doesn't need to be visible to be effective. In fact, his absence makes his eventual arrival stronger. When Doom finally appears, viewers won't just be meeting a new villain. They'll be realizing he's been part of the equation all along. That realization hits harder when you understand that Loki's godhood may have been the first successful step in Doom's long-term vision. So when people ask how Loki gained centuries of knowledge so quickly, I don't think the answer is just time slipping. Time slipping is the mechanism, not the source. The source is direction, focus, a framework for understanding what he was observing. Without that, centuries of observation would still be chaos. Loki didn't just watch the multiverse. He studied it with intent, with structure, possibly with guidance. By the end, Loki doesn't just save reality. He preserves the possibility of stories continuing. That's what makes him the god of stories. Not because he writes them, but because he ensures they can exist. Doom's belief has always been that stories shape reality, not the other way around. Loki embodies that belief in its purest form. And that's why I think their connection isn't symbolic. It's foundational. When you connect all the dots, the conclusion becomes hard to ignore. Loki didn't accidentally become what the multiverse needed. He was shaped into it, trained by time, guided by philosophy, and possibly introduced to the deeper truths of reality by the one mind capable of seeing the entire board at once. Dr. Doom doesn't need to sit on the throne of time. He just needs to know who does. And that's what makes this theory so powerful to me. Loki isn't just inspired by Doom. Loki is proof that Doom's way of thinking already works. The temporal loom didn't fail because it was flawed. It failed because it was incomplete. Doom knew that. Loki learned it. And together, even without sharing the screen, they may have already saved the multiverse in ways we're only beginning to understand. If this theory is even partially true, then Loki's sacrifice isn't the end of his story. It's the foundation of the next saga. One where Dr. Doom steps into a universe already held together by a living god, ready to reshape destiny once again. And when that moment comes, everything Loki endured will finally make sense. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more deep MCU theories like this, make sure to like the video, share it with someone who loves Marvel lore, and subscribe for future breakdowns.